Information, Section 230, and the content tightrope that social media giants are trying to walk. They say if matter and antimatter ever meet, that the universe will end. And we're very close to that with these two gentlemen coming up. Joining us is Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, and Kevin O'Leary, Chairman of O-Shares ETFs and a Shark Tank host. Kevin is also a CNBC contributor, so be forewarned. You guys are looking for, you've done this before, and it makes for some good discussions. Jonathan, I'm going to start with you, because every time I see you, I say, have you made any progress? Because you want you want the world to be as perfect as it can possibly be, and I always point out that's at the risk of really suffocating a lot of free speech and the cancel culture, and even promoting it even more. Are you getting where you need to be yet? I mean, on Twitter, everybody's been canceled that says anything on Twitter already. Are you there yet with Facebook? What more needs to be done to make you living in a world where you feel like there's no, I don't know, nothing controversial?
Well, you know, it's always a pleasure to see you, Joe. And I think what you've laid out, like this quest for utopia, is really not what we're looking for at all. We're simply looking for an effort at decency. And if we just want to talk about that for a minute, I think what Becky laid out just before, when you look at the prevalence of anti-vaxxer accounts that have been amplified and spread across Facebook, they don't show up on your network, but they show up every day to billions of people because Facebook profits from amplifying these voices, which are literally killing people. So I don't think, you know, freedom of speech necessarily means freedom of reach. People have the right to say that they don't want to take the vaccines. They have the right to say that there are Jewish space lasers. They have the right to say that, you know, certain kinds of people are bad. But the fact of the matter is Facebook and Twitter and Google also have the right to decide whether they want to elevate those voices, whether they want to profit off those voices, whether they want to amplify them for the world to see. And unfortunately, they continue to make the wrong decision. Take just, for example, what was laid out again just before our segment, where they talked about Mark bragging having gotten rid of 1 billion plus accounts or 1 billion plus posts last quarter. If Facebook had any transparency and we could look at their progress quarter over quarter, but they don't show us that. They're unwilling to give us what every other public company does, which is information about their product that you can use as investors, or we can use as stakeholders, or Congress can use as regulators. Okay. So all we're saying is put people over profits. All we're saying is behave by the same rules that every other business in America abides by. All we're saying is apply a modicum of moral leadership to your $86 billion company.
Decency in Twitter, Jonathan, I don't know. I'm not optimistic. Kevin, you want to respond?
Sure. Actually, let's take it right from the top. Freedom of speech means freedom of speech. There is no way to define it any other way. It includes allowing the lunatic fringe to say what they wish. And when it comes to the vaccine, you know, I'll tell you something. There's a reason we're only going to get to 2/3 of this population before you hit a brick wall. And, you know, you have to listen to everybody's opinion. For example, the healthcare worker that gave me my shot was 24 years old. I asked her when she took hers to get some information about what it would be like for the first shot of my Pfizer. And she said, I'm never taking this. I haven't had my kids yet. I had never thought about that. And when I discussed it later with the CEO of the hospital, I said, what do you tell her? And he said, what can I tell her? We simply don't have the data yet. She has every right to have her opinion. When you add the cohort of women in their 20s and 30s to people that won't take vaccines, that basically gets to 30% of the population. They have every right to say no. They have every right to put their voice out there and ask for the data. There's no reason we shouldn't have this debate. And frankly, I want to point something out about bashing tech companies. You know, you keep doing this, you end up like Europe. They bashed their companies a long time ago. Now they don't have a tech sector. The only way they can get tax revenue from any technology companies is litigate them, including all the American companies that service countries like France and Germany. Technology is disruptive. It makes people feel uncomfortable, and yet it powers productivity. Now, lately, the company to bash du jour is Facebook. Facebook saved the American economy, along with other digital companies that allowed it to digitize direct-to-consumer over the last year. Why is it such a great idea to bash it? And frankly, canceling people's voices makes a lot of Americans uncomfortable. I just find it really difficult to make that decision on a daily basis. I would rather live with the lunatic fringe, shine transparency, give factual information out there. And lastly, if people really didn't like Facebook, they could simply turn it off and not use it. Same with Twitter. Technology constantly changes. Look at IBM. It's a zombie company. It was the behemoth 30 years ago. There's going to be something replacing Facebook one day, too. You have to let the market be the market and not try to determine what is right and wrong when the consumer does that every day on their own.
Definitely a different opinion than yours, John.
It must be a wonderful.
I warned you.
I just got to say, Kevin, it must be a wonderful universe, the one you live in. I'll tell you about the one that I live in, the one that America lives in right now. We are still sifting through the rubble of January the 6th. And if you want to know how that happened, it's because armed militias organized out in the open via Facebook groups. So if we want to put it into the context of capitalism for a moment, in the 80s, when J&J had a few Tylenol bottles that were tampered with, they took everyone off the shelf. They fixed the product before they put it back on the market. And if you look at the 90s, when Odwalla had a child who died of E. coli from one of their juices, they took everyone off the shelf and they reformulated the production process. I don't think it's saying too much for an $86 billion company to think that they couldn't take their product off the shelf and fix it so it doesn't, I don't know, cause an insurrection in the Capitol. And this, let's just be clear, I really strongly agree with my friend Steve Huffman, the CEO of Reddit, when he says there is okay for there to be a lunatic fringe. Just keep them on the fringe. Again, Kevin, we've talked about this before. When you're willing to have a white supremacist come and pitch on your show, Shark Tank, then you can come back to me and tell me how you cherish free speech. When you and your producers are willing to do that, I'm willing to come on here and tell me you've shown me how I'm wrong.
I would much prefer the market to be just full of information that's factual. Of course, everybody wants that. If Tylenol didn't fix their problem, my friend, the company wouldn't exist. They did everything in their power to correct it with the information they had at hand. Asking one man, a Zuckerberg or Dorsey, to fix society's problems and eliminate all voices is virtually impossible, and it's not going to happen. But I really feel, and I'm very happy that you get to have your opinion. I want you to have your opinion. I want you to cry out what you believe in, just as I do, and then let people make their own decisions. That's what really makes this economy powerful and this whole democracy work. Everybody should have the right to speak out and say what they believe.
Everybody has the right. The question is whether we amplify and elevate those individuals. Look, the hearing
Who's going to decide?
Kevin,
You're going to decide what I get to hear? It's your decision? I don't think so, my friend. I'm going to let the market do that.
It's not my decision. A law